Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. And today on the show, I'm joined by Joel, and today we are talking about the Inspire 3. Joel, tell me about the Inspire 3.
Inspire 3 is the cinematographer and photography drone that's designed for high-end content creators like myself. It's a big step up from, say, the Mavic series and the Air series because it takes it to the next level.
How does it take it to the next level? I've used the Inspire 2 and I also own a Air 2 as well. What are the differences between that? I know you can buy an Air 2 at JB Hi-Fi, which is, for our international audience, just a local store. But the Inspire 3, it's a little bit more professional, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely next level. So bigger frame, obviously. It runs dual batteries. It has its own removable gimbal, but then also has removable lenses. So with traditional DJI product, you have obviously an inbuilt lens. Sometimes some of them have got 2 or 3 lenses put into them now. But this actually has removable lenses like a full DSLR style lens. Because DJI now own Hasselblad, some of that lens technology has moved into these lenses. And so they've been making their own lenses called DL. And that has the ability to, have everything from an 18 through to now a 75 mil that you can change out.
Yeah, great. So you obviously didn't start with the Inspire 3. How did you find your way to the Inspire 3? And you mentioned it's the most coveted drone that you want to get. What makes it that?
So I started off my career, I'm obviously a photographer by trade and was doing a bit of videography as well, and then had been watching the drone market for a while and had seen a few different people. I mean, the Phantom series was probably what got DJI its name, which were the obviously big white square kind of quadcopters. And then the Mavic series, when they started those, was kind of a more compact foldable. The Phantom was probably this sort of size, and then they brought out the Mavics, which would fold down to this sort of size. So when the Mavic series started coming to market, it caught my eye and it'd been something I'd been interested in. And then when the Mavic 2 Pro came out, that was the first one that had, one of the first ones to have a Hasselblad lens and quite a decent lens in it, really good size sensor, but obviously the ability to do photography and video, good battery life, and the ability to take filters and all that sort of stuff. So when I bought mine, I bought it just before Christmas. I think I flew it the week after Christmas, I think, for the first time, very nervously, having never really flown drones. Kind of then realized straight away that to really get into this, you really kind of need to get your license. So I started that path, I think literally the week after Christmas. I reached out into a couple of groups and got put in touch with some people, and I now owe them a lot because of how good they are. The team at FPV Australia helped me get my license, but it was a long process. So we had to find time to do it because you obviously sit down in the classroom and then have to find time to take that a week out of your business. So part of going down that process is you go for what's called your REPL first, which is your remote pilot license. And then from there, you can then get your REOC, which is your remote operator certificate. So an independent operator like myself has to get a REOC, because otherwise you can't use a REPL by itself. You have to have a REOC or operate under someone under a REOC. So for example, if you went and got your REPL, you could operate under my REOC. That's how it kind of works. So the process is that you sit down in a classroom and you spend sort of 4 days in class. I haven't been back to a classroom since I was at school, so that was a real good start. And you go everything from learning mapping. So you pull out old school maps that pilots would use that are flying small light aircraft, and understand how they work, understand everything about airspace, aerodromes, radio, being able to understand the radio frequencies and all that kind of part. And then you learn about weather and a whole lot of other areas about the licensing. And so that's sort of 4 days. And then you have sort of half a day of practical. Teacher can understand where your skills are at and whether you're competent. And then you sit down at the time. I now believe it's changed, but we sat down for, I think it was an hour or maybe 2 hour exam about 70 or 80 questions, and you had to, luckily it was an open book, so you could then reference, but you had to get an 85% pass mark at the end. And then once that's done and you're passed, you then progress to the next stage of doing a REOC. And what that is that you then have to have all your operations manuals and your operation library, which is all the procedures and rules that you're going to follow with having your license, basically laid out And then you then have to then put all that forward to a CASA delegate. You're assigned a CASA delegate, and CASA is the Civil Aviation Safety Authority here in Australia, and they control a lot of the airspace and the rules around flying in Australia, both for drones and commercial and amateur pilots. You're then given the delegate. They then give you an assessment for a particular idea. I actually had a job coming up that I wanted to do. So I had they'd given my assessment to me based around that. So I had to fill out a whole lot of things around risk assessments, job safety analysis, flight space, council permissions, all that sort of stuff. You then send that to them. They'll then give you a phone call, and you'll sit there and they will quiz you on your assessment and ask you, how did you find that? Where did you find that? All that kind of information. And then from there, it will ask you more about what you're planning to do, more about your understanding of the rules and things like that. And then if you passed, you'll then get your REOC. And as part of that as well, you then need to get what's called your AROC. And
it just keeps going.
It does. And your AROC is your basically your radio operator certificate, and that enables you to use, I'm just going to grab it, this. So this is a airband radio, and this is designed for being able to communicate with the towers and obviously also aircraft if you need to. And it's quite a powerful piece of equipment. You can legally own one of these in Australia without a license, but you cannot press this button unless you have an AROC. So you actually are then communicating on interrupting airspace. So it's an amazing piece of tech, and it's really quite interesting to use. Every time I go out anywhere near any kind of airspace, I have it on to monitor. And it's really interesting that what you hear on there, particularly, traffic and coming in and out of different airspaces. I've used it on a couple of jobs. I had to use it to communicate with the tower at Melbourne Airport on a job a couple of years ago, which was quite interesting and daunting at the same time. But then also, I've been out on jobs monitoring airspace as part of what you need to do, and have heard the police come over asking for permission to enter certain airspaces and things like that. So it's really, really interesting, because you can obviously use your sight and your hearing to look and hear for planes and in the air. But if you hear someone in your airspace that's talking and communicating with it, you can then have a heads up that they're going to come into your area. So very, very vital in that sense. I did a job earlier in this year, and I needed to talk directly with a helicopter pilot. And so part of the job was that they were coming into an airspace, and we were communicating to make it easier and safer for his arrival. And yeah, it was really, really quite cool to be able to have that communication, making sure that, we had to delay him to do a go around to then extend it before he came into land, and then talking to him when he was taking off. He would give me heads up that he was about to lift off. Obviously with helicopters, they obviously take time to spin up, get up to temperature, be ready to go. So having that extra ability to know just before they take off, and obviously letting the airspace know, is also, really quite interesting. So yeah.
You've just shared a lot of information there about all the different things that you need to be able to fly these drones. In that process, for our audience that's watching or listening today, would you tell them that it was a straightforward process? Or if you really want to be able to be a legitimate drone pilot, is there a lot of work that goes into it?
There is a lot of back end. So running a REOC, there's a lot more responsibilities, because you then obviously have to maintain flight records. You then have to do risk assessments, job safety analysis, flight planning. I've done a lot of work this year, probably been one of my busiest years probably with the drone, and having to work in a couple of different areas where you're having to do a lot more planning and things. So we've done some work around the Westgate Bridge project, working with different people involved with that, obviously getting permission to go onto their site, working with them, working around their RDOs. So obviously there's less people on site, there's less risk. So you spend a lot more time doing pre-planning, site visits. Most of the shoots I've done this year have involved at least some kind of pre-site visit to go through everything, figure out where we're going to fly, plan our flight paths, making sure that we're not going to be in anyone's way, making sure that we'll get the shots that we need, but then also then putting a plan together to then submit forward for approval in some cases. So 2 examples, I had to do some work with the council. I wanted to close off some areas to fly and wanted to get permission to do that, so that you don't have any problems, but then planning flight paths and things like that, sending them all the paperwork and then not having an issue because you're going down that route. Another one, I wanted to use a car park as a takeoff and landing position in the city. I contacted the car park owner. They were very reluctant. They said we normally don't allow this. But I said, look, I'm happy to put together a flight plan. I put together my usual process. So I use a CRM system that helps do all this data. Literally sent him through the flight plan and he was blown away. He turned around to me and said to me, well, you've done this before. I have no problem at all. You obviously know what you're doing. Just let us know when you want to do it. I'm very particular about what I do because my license is so valuable to me for what it is, because it is obviously a unique thing to have and not everyone can have it because it's an expensive process to go down and it's a lot of work. I obviously want to do everything by the book, do the right way. I had to actually knock back a job earlier this year because I wasn't happy with what they were wanting me to do. It was just not safe. They were expecting a lot. I'd seen what they'd done with previous footage and looked at it and went, I'm not comfortable doing that. I won't do that. And then going back to the client and saying, look, I'm not comfortable with what they're trying to achieve. It's just not possible. If they want to do something else themselves, that's fine. I understand. But yeah, I'm not comfortable doing that. And that's the thing I'm kind of proud of is making sure that I do things properly. I follow the rules. I'm very particular about it. In terms of safety, the Inspire is really quite a large drone, and the propeller wingspan that it creates is quite large, and it would definitely hurt someone if someone was for it to fall on them or to also be cut by one of the blades. So you're very particular about what you do and also trying to land it in certain areas. I've worked on 2 sort of rather large film shoots this year, and trying to pick a spot where you take off and land away from people and you operate in a safe environment is, quite hard when you've got people wanting to come have a look at it, and you're very particular about that sort of stuff. So you go and find somewhere away from everyone to operate so that you're safe, and you're very particular about how you make sure there's someone's in the area, that you make sure you clear them before they land and things like that.
So I operate under the restricted rules. So I have to be 30 meters away from people and all that kind of stuff. Is that removed from what?
Part of it is removed through the REOC. It's removed down to 15 meters, but that's only to within people that are working within the crew. So if it's on a film set or something like that, then that is allowable to 15. Otherwise, you still follow the 30-meter rule if it's people that you're working around. There are some new rules coming in that will allow exemptions to that to fly over people, which I'm starting to walk down that path, but I just haven't had a chance this year to really go down that route. But I know a couple other people that have successfully gone for it. There are some certain rules you need to abide by with that, but I'm going to be looking into that in the new year because it will sort of open up a few more avenues of doing things. But at the moment, the beauty with the Inspire is that with the longer lenses is that you can still shoot content that you would traditionally need to be a lot closer for with the longer lens from the compression factor, and it allows you to feel like you're closer, but you're not actually closer. So it's quite interesting in that sense, doing that sort of stuff. You look back at the footage and think, oh, was I over people? No, I wasn't. I was still way far enough away, but it's just the effect that it has with those longer lenses.
Yeah, great. And when you're operating the Inspire 3, do you have any tips for our audience that might be valuable for them?
Look, the Inspire 3 is definitely, it's a big step up from having the original. Even from the Inspire 2, I knew public people that have had them, but seeing the tech difference with them, it's made things a lot easier. So I did a job earlier in the year where I took a videographer on. We went to South Australia for a job, and he was an Inspire 2 user, and he got to use my Inspire 3 because I have dual controllers. Having the dual controllers is a must with Inspire 3. You really need to have both because you need to be able to dual ops. And what dual ops means is that you have myself as the pilot flying with one controller, and then the DOP or whoever's running your camera for you uses the second controller, and they have full camera control. So they can then button on, button off record, change exposure, change all your details, and they can then just control the gimbal independently. And then all I see on my controller is from the FPV camera, which is on the nose cone of the drone. And that enables you to be able to then fly easily, and particularly with the longer lenses, it makes it a lot harder to fly with the longer lenses. So the FPV, obviously with the mapping detail, and then obviously with your sight watching it, you can then keep your eye purely on the drone 100% of the time, flying safely and in controlled conditions. then the person can then operate the camera. So a couple of times this year where I've been flying, having a dual operator control, they've been able to, I can fly safely, easily, and they just basically, I'm chasing, they just tell me faster or slower, left or right, coming back from there, and then that enables me to fly and then to control the camera. So yeah, the dual ops is a must. Multiple batteries is also a must with the Inspire 3. They're not as longer lasting as some of the Mavic series now. You probably only get about 20, 25 minutes out of it, depending on the conditions. I actually have 2 drives for it. I have two SSDs because it takes a particular proprietary SSD. Have spare blades because you never know, if you might have an issue or something like that. So having spare blades on board, and then obviously a blower brush, because the sensor doesn't have any real protection when you take lenses off, and it can get dirty very easily. So having the blower brush in the bag, I always make sure that when I'm removing lenses in a situation where it's not really clean, to just give the sensor a quick clean before you put the lens on. And then obviously also I believe in, because again, my photography background, circular polarizers and ND filters are a must for the lenses on them as well.
Do you find those fiddly?
They're very fiddly.
But still a must.
But still a must. And it's trying to get them right, trying to get the polarization right before you take off is always the hard thing. But yeah, it makes such a difference.
And what kind of situations would you really utilize the circular polarizer?
Anytime we're above, anytime you're trying to capture sky or water, they're the 2 biggest things that you'll really see the difference with a circular polarizer. But it also helps with reflections, and polarizers make a massive difference just to help color punch, particularly on a dull day as well, to a certain degree. But then on a bright sunny day, you just need it to get that real blueness in the sky and to get the real the color out of the water.
Yeah, okay. So we've talked about who the Inspire 3 is for. Who is the Inspire 3 not for? Probably me.
Well, someone that, for starters, someone that's not licensed, because you need to be licensed because it's over 2 kilos. It weighs about 4 kilos with the gimbal on board. So you need to be licensed legally to operate it. Someone that is just enjoying their Mavic and wants to go up the next level, you don't need to go to the Inspire. Inspire has that market for like what I'm doing with it, and then other DOPs and other production companies that are using it on a higher end. It's just overkill. It is. You can fly it by yourself, but you really kind of need to do on a specific jobs. You really need to be a 2-person operation. Most of the times I've flown it commercially for jobs, I've had either a DOP or another operator running the camera, and it just makes everything so much easier with that device. So I fly it for pleasure occasionally, to do imagery and stuff, and I like shooting with the longer lenses just for the compression factor that it gives. But yeah, it is overkill. It's overpriced if you just want to go up a step up from a Mavic. It is a big overkill to go to that.
You just mentioned price. Do you want to talk about the pricing for our audience?
The body itself's about 20,000
Australian dollars.
Australian dollars. The way my kit is put together, just over $30,000 in terms of
lenses, batteries,
dual controllers, batteries, all of the lenses now, because now that they've released the 75. Yeah, it's a never ending. It's probably close to 35 now, probably in terms of what is in the kit. So. Yeah.
So the lenses, can you just quickly rattle off which ones they are?
So they're 18, 24, 35, 50, and then the new 75. Working with different people this year, getting their feedback, particularly working with the different DOPs, is what their preference is. And they all like to shoot quite shallow.
Of course.
5, 6, or 6.3, 7.1, 8 kind of. I'm a big depth of field guy. So for me, I would always try and shoot as, F8, 9, 10, 11 kind of thing. But yeah, for video and for productions, they seem to like a little bit shallower depth of field. But for me, yeah, coming from, I suppose, my background, I kind of like having a better depth of field. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, okay. And to wrap up the episode today, is there anything else you want to talk about the Inspire 3?
It's just been one of those, it was for me when I got my license, it was the goal product that I wanted to buy. The 2 was there when I got my license, and then I had a fellow videographer that I know. He went and bought his 2 virtually straight away, him getting his license, and he got his probably 12 months after me. And he loved it, and I've seen him use it on a few jobs, and it was quite interesting hearing some of his thoughts and just how it was, because originally the 2 you had to buy 2 controllers, and then had to buy screens because they didn't have screens. So a lot of guys were running iPad minis before the new version of iPad minis when they were still a little bit bigger. So probably what is now, well, probably an Air, I suppose, is what the minis were originally. So he ran those to run the camera system. There were 2 gimbal choices with the 2. You could either buy an X5 or an X7. Yeah. And the X5 was a micro 4/3 sensor. And then the X7 was the DL effectively sensor, but it wasn't full frame, where the X9, which is on the Inspire 3, is a full frame sensor. And so that was kind of you could buy an Inspire 2 cheaper if you bought the 4/3 gimbal. But the difference between it was that it just didn't have that effect, and it just didn't seem to be as good.
It didn't have the look you were
It
going
didn't have
for.
that look, and it was just it wasn't that full frame effect. So yeah, it was kind of the other thing that put me off. And then it was getting long in the tooth. And with DJI products, when you start knowing it's getting a little bit older, you kind of know that the 3's coming. So after tossing and turning, do I buy a 2, and then just seeing the issues that people were having, and it just wasn't as easy to operate with. I knew the 3 was coming, and it was like, I'll just wait. I can wait. I've waited this long. I can wait longer. So I literally just waited. And then, when it was announced at the start of last year, it's kind of like, I'm ready. And so I rang my dealer that I buy most of my DJI product from and said, I think before it was even announced, I said, I want one. He said, right, yep, cool. You're on top of the list. It's like now it was just the wait became. And then, when the day I first took it out and flew it for the first time, I had a tear in my eye, because for me, it's something I'd aspired to for a long period of time, and I had always wanted that. I knew that was in my future, and I'd always wanted to go down that route. And so the day I flew it was mesmerizing, and it was pretty amazing to fly and experience it. And so it was very different to fly, because it's a lot heavier, and the way it moves in the air is very different to a Mavic, even to a Phantom to a certain degree. So that was quite interesting. But then, the first couple of jobs you shoot with it, I think I flew it, and within a week I was out on a 3-day job with it, and started flying it, and it was like, wow, it was mind blowing. The footage that came out of it was breathtaking. Okay. And I knew, this is the right choice. And then, it's grown from there. And, the low light capabilities, the first night job I did with it was amazing. And having had shot some stuff with Mavic 3, the lens is a lot wider on Inspire 3, so you actually capture more, particularly when you're shooting cityscapes and things like that. And the low light capabilities with the video and the noise in the video was, no need to do any post work on it. It was perfect. So it was kind of reassured my decision to buy one.
Yeah, it's always nice when dreams become a reality.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Joel, thank you for coming on the show today and talking about the Inspire 3.
Thanks, Nathan.